Alex, and I'm also very honored, here we go, honored to have an opportunity to show with Lynda in this absolutely gorgeous gallery that Myrtis has. And I also have to say what a wonderful tea she puts on and how beautifully it's arranged with all the different plates. And things to eat.
Yeah, let's let you know, all the tea stuff, that's part of Myrtis. Myrtis collects teapots and cups. So what you see on the tables is she's sharing her collection with you of her tea stuff.
Anyway, it looks wonderful. I thought that was a lovely visual to come into before looking at the art and hearing all this stuff. Since Alex covered my educational background, more or less, I'll just hop right into how I became an artist. I've always, in fact, done art, and I always wanted to do it. I didn't really want to do anything else, and I've been very fortunate to be able to really devote most of my time to doing that. So I was trained as a painter. Actually started with collage in the 80s as a way of trying to get over a terrible art block that was producing nothing except a great deal of frustration. Canvases ripped off the stretcher bars and thrown out, etc., etc. Nasty time all around. Anyway, it was with great delight that I learned that collage, you can just move it all around. If you don't like it, you can just take it and pick it up and shake it out, start all over again. And you really don't have to make any firm decisions until you come to gluing it down. Then it's pretty stable. But I've actually gone back and taken work and looked at it and said, you know, I like the pieces in here, but let's do something else with them and take it apart and just use it again in some fashion. Then I think it was in the early 2000s. A neighbor of mine came up to my door with a large plastic bag, and he said, I have all these cigar boxes that I was going to do something with, but I couldn't find out, you know, what it was going to be. And would you like those? And I thought, oh boy, yes, I like those, and thank you very much. So that was really the start of this particular series that I've presented here. The cigar boxes are marvelous containers. I mean, that's what I saw them as. And I know that they've been even used for such things as purses, that some people have taken them to that height, not only as an art form, but in monetary value. I understand, you know, for several $1,000s you can purchase some of these wonderful cigar box purses. However, I haven't seen them. I've just heard about them, and that stuck in my mind because I thought that was a rather relevant fact. Now, I wanted to do a little bit of talking about what I know about the creative process. Now, I know that, and I listened to what Lynda had to say about what she does with undressing the trees, and how she comes to make what she's making. And in many respects, I think we have a similar form of working. For me, it's really about process. It's about having physical things to actually work with. As with the collage, that's where I really learned how wonderful it was for this person to have something that I could bend to my will much more easily than drawing or painting or any form. And that was such a major step for me in what I was going to produce. So I've always been a collector of stuff, lots of junk, you know, gifts from the sea, shells, pieces of coral, sticks, stones, even sticks and stones, that sort of thing. And I brought some things that I have collected, and also some papers I have made, and some of the other items that I've used in these boxes. And I'd like to pass a box around that has it stuff in it, just so you can kind of feel it and look at it and think about playing with it. That's really the thing. So. I did want to show you a couple of things in here. Now, I'll talk about where I get a lot of my things, but this is what you sort of can say is repurposing, and they're labeled, and they're tied up with a kind of something you can buy at Michael's, which it looks like something you can bind things with. It's a wire, but it's wrapped, so it probably belongs in their foliage department for all their bouquet displays and this sort of thing. But most of this that has been purchased, like eggs, everybody wants to know where I get the eggs from. But you can see how they have been, I'm not using them the way they're intended, in other words. So I'm doing other things. This is a doll's head, but it makes a perfect eye, for instance. Okay, and then there's some papers in here that some of these works have in them. And this is just wonderful fun with paper. You can pick it up and look at it. And there, where there's writing, there's a piece there that has writing on it. And the way you can get, what things you can get out of actually just writing on a piece of paper. But then these are all Japanese papers, which have the advantage of whenever paint or ink you put on them, it all goes all the way through. They're not sized. So what you have on the one side will be different from what you have on the other side. And then a lot of them have been worked over with iridescent oil stick. But shall I just pass this down? You can finger them to your heart's delight. All right, this one, these two, actually they're sitting right here in their reality. I wanted to talk about the containers, how I've come to look at them. Let me start back one further step. In doing these, with taking all this lovely junk and cigar boxes, it's a sort of a dialogue with the material. And each one of these things, the cigar boxes almost have suggested to me, or will suggest to me, different things to do with them. For instance, putting legs on them, then adding these two that are up here come out for me as some platforms that you, of course, not at quite this scale, but I can imagine some ancient peoples using platforms that they could put together with what they could find for their sacrifices to propitiate the gods. That was a very important sort of thing. I mean, we do it in different ways, but I like the old ways better, unless it involves killing or eating. That's sort of hard to. That's sort of hard to think about in this day and age. I mean, we do enough of it anyway in the whole wide world, but we put a different name on it. Not any better. So anyway, these two are, I think, the most obvious ones that represent the platform or even altar kind of concept. And a lot of these things come from my interest in ceremonies and rituals of different natures. Some that I think I would love to invent on my own. But it's sort of fun to imagine when I'm working with this, what somebody could, what a people could do with this, or what someone could do with this. So I find it adds to what I'm doing. When I'm working with the work, it kind of helps to direct me in producing it. And also there's another factor which I didn't understand for a long time. One of the artists who is a very well-known painter, whose name of course I cannot remember at this point, she said while she was doing her work, "It is the blue leading me, and then I'm leading the blue." In other words, the work is telling her what to do, and she's telling it what to do. And it's this dialogue that I'm trying to talk about. And I don't know how else to explain it, except one more explanation would be when a writer talks about his characters taking over the story and almost writing it for him. Well, after a certain point, a lot of these things do this. So let's go on to the right way. Yes. All right. Now I want to talk about too the idea of the container where it's a double box, and how you have to think about relating what's in the top to what's in the bottom. So those two parts can have a dialogue also. So in this one, for instance, I tried to reference the bird which is producing the eggs in the nest, and whenever I can, I like to introduce some bones just for the suggestion of this cycle of life that I think these are all about. And so all of them are really, in some way or another, about that, and the kind of the nest that we all have or make of our own, in our own homes, for instance. And in these two pieces, I wanted to talk about another part of thinking about when you're doing a body of work that you want to show. I got to a point where all of these things were very small, and I really wanted to change the scale. And I thought, well, how am I going to do this with a very small box? So this really was the first time that I tried this, by putting a box on top of a long pole. Now that's really very straightforward, and you think it would be very interesting, easy to come across, but it didn't cross my mind until really almost to the end of making this whole series. And this one, there was a specific place that I wanted to show this piece, and I could feel, I had in my mind's eye, and how it came to be that way, I don't know. But I had purchased a wreath, a grass wreath at Michael's again. I didn't know what I was going to use it for, but it was on sale, so being someone who likes to buy on sale, I bought it. And I knew that it'll feature somewhere. Anyway, that became the base for this piece that's up here, up in here. Then, from the backyard, there was a very nasty grapevine growing in some of my trees. And when I pulled that down, I thought, I know exactly where this is going to go. And that's where it went. And I'm very fortunate to have a colleague who is excellent at making installations become reality. Because I had no idea how this was going to go up. I had some ideas of how you could do it, but I relied on him to actually install it securely. And so I have to say, without him, that wouldn't be here. But it was the only piece that I did have in my mind that I couldn't do in my own studio, because my studio only has a 7.5-foot ceiling. That's taller. And it was wonderful to see it here in the way I thought it was going to look, and it did. Here it is. This is one of the last pieces that I did for the show, and it involved something that I had sort of stayed away from previously, and that was structuring a piece out of a number of boxes. Because I didn't really, I wasn't really sure that I could handle that, either structurally or if I make it interesting enough to have that sort of, oh, that's a nice piece feeling to it. Anyway, I found that I had a few boxes that went together but were not perfect fits. And they were interesting, they were different in size and a little different in shape and interiors. And I worked at cleaning them up, because a lot of these boxes are painted, and I strip them down and then do a lot of sanding and sort of adjusting them so they come out to be square, and they had to be somewhat square to fit into this sort of thing. But then I found I did have to use a number of shims in order to get them to make a straight line vertically, so that I could put a sort of a casing around them. And then it was actually a lot of fun, I discovered, to try to find the appropriate pieces that would relate to each other, so that you would look at the varying levels in different ways, that these are different ways of containing these objects. And then finishing the outside so that it looked like a sleek piece from the side and something that demanded much more attention from the front. And that's it. So thank you very much.